to this session on the annual financial review and 990 informational reporting. My name is Steve Saldivar. I am the Director of Finance here at Hfma, and I will be walking you through this session. So annually, each chapter and region conducts an annual financial review or audit to test and validate its fiscal integrity and operating guidelines. So why is that important, you may ask? Well, it ensures that the chapter's financial statements correctly reflect the activities of the chapter each year. It ensures that minimum financial review procedures are in place that test the chapter's receipts, disbursements, reconciliation of the bank accounts, and it validates that transaction approval guidelines are in place and being observed. So some requirements of the annual financial review is that each chapter is required to conduct an independent audit or an Hfma internal financial review by an individual or individuals possessing the appropriate financial experience and who are not involved in the chapter's day-to-day bookkeeping. It's up to the chapter on which route you take. As I mentioned, you can either do an actual audit where you're engaging a CPA firm to do that, or you can do the Hfma annual financial review checklist, and just be sure that the person that you choose to do that is not associated with your chapter's day-to-day bookkeeping, and that they do have the appropriate experience to conduct that review. Chapters that conduct the Hfma internal financial review must send a copy of the completed and signed financial review program to Hfma. Typically that's August 1st. Just note, depending on the year and circumstances, that date may change, but typically that it is due back by August 1st. The documents this year will be uploaded via Cvent. If you haven't had a chance to look at our policies and procedures session, please go take a look at that. We go through how to submit those documents via Cvent. Okay. So the review itself must consist of 5 fiscal months of the fiscal year. June and May, which are month 1 and month 12, are required, and then it's up to the chapter, well, not to the chapter, it's up to the person conducting the review to choose any additional months between July and April. Okay. If the chapter has an independent review performed, by an outside CPA firm, it must meet the minimum guidelines established by the Hfma financial review program. Please note that a financial statement review does not meet the minimum requirements of the annual financial review. Guidelines for this can be found in the Financial Tax Insurance Management Guide that's in the Resource Center, and then also you can get a copy of the requirements from the other video, from the policies and procedures walkthrough. Okay. So prior to submitting IRS Form 990 worksheets, the annual review must be completed, signed, and confirmation of the chapter fiscal year-end financial review form must be returned to the association by August 1st with all supporting schedules and work papers. And we'll chat through that in a little bit when we go through the 990 process. So this is what the confirmation looks like. You'll see that there are 2 yellow check boxes there. That's where you will indicate whether you had an independent audit or financial review, or if you completed the Hfma financial review program. This form here is a little outdated. You'll see it has the signatures down at the bottom, but again, these will be submitted and signed electronically via the Cvent process that we review in the other session. So please go take a look at that when you have an opportunity. And as always, feel free to reach out with any questions. So now we'll take a look at some sections of the Hfma chapter financial review. First is the internal control questionnaire. Part A of the financial review is related to cash receipts and collection procedures. This section gathers additional information regarding the oversight, handling of cash, kind of make sure we have a buddy system in terms of cash so that 2 people are aware at all times, tracing deposits to records of attendees, sponsors, and exhibitors, and review of the bank reconciliation. So who reviews it, how often, what documentation and receipts are we collecting? For example, number two states, are cash receipts in the form of cash received at a chapter event verified by a second chapter volunteer? This question is asked to ensure that proper checks and balances are in place. what we always say is trust but verify. We want to trust everyone, but we want to verify that someone else is aware of the inflow and outflow of cash and that it's being tracked appropriately. Next, the review goes into cash receipts, disbursements, and bank reconciliations. The purpose of these sections is to test and validate that the functionality and controls within each of these areas are implemented and functioning as expected. For example, the reviewer will do things such as analyze invoices for proper approval, test an appropriate sample of board and volunteer expense reimbursements, and also account for the numerical sequence of all checks that have been cut from the chapter. If anything's missing, we'll want to be sure we're looking into where those missing check numbers are, were they voided, is there a proper reason why that check is not accounted for. These procedures help to ensure all disbursements are properly authorized and again accounted for. And just a reminder that the annual financial review and the confirmation must be submitted typically by August 1st, signed off by both the offboarding treasurer and the offboarding president. Okay, both the offboarding treasurer and offboarding president will receive the CVent link where you're able to sign digitally and upload all the required documentation for your annual financial review. So again, here's just a quick look at the form that needs to be submitted. Again, this will be submitted via CVent this year. Please take a look at the policy and documents video for additional information. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to talk about the Chapter 990 information required to process the Hfma group return. So each year, the association completes a Group 990 return for all Hfma chapters. That is to help you guys out and alleviate the need for each and every chapter to submit their own 990 individually. We collect all the information from you guys via this form and also a survey, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So that gathers all the information that we need, and then we work with our accounting firm to submit one Group 990 return. So as I mentioned, typically the first thing we do is the 990 survey. This is typically sent out in June and then due back a few weeks later. We'll review a few sample questions in just a moment. But first, we need you to finalize your books for the year and complete your chapter's annual financial review by August 1st. If you need more details on the annual financial review, just rewind and take a look back. You can also look in the Financial Tax Management Insurance Guide in the Chapter Resource Center. So up next are some tax compliance questions that are typically in the survey that we send you guys. The purpose of this survey is to assist us in gathering answers to some general 990 questions for each chapter. As mentioned, these will typically go out in June. Again, that date may fluctuate depending on what's going on that year. So maybe June and maybe July. We try to make things a little bit better each year, and if we find that we can move things around or there's a better sequence of things, we try to take advantage of that. But June is typically when these go out. So we only need one submission per chapter. Typically, the treasurer or the president will complete this together, or you guys can assign one of you to go ahead and take this on and get it back to us. So here's some information that we asked for, including the number of voting board members, types of policies in place, and enforcements of policies. Most questions on the survey are going to be yes/no questions, and they're just the questions that you would see on a normal 990 form if you are familiar with that. In total, the survey should take no more than, I'd say, maybe 20, 30 minutes, depending on your comfort level with the Form 990. So let's take a look at the 990 Excel worksheet that we will send, and we actually populate this for you. So thank you, Perla, for that. Perla goes through and populates all of the 990 Excel worksheets for each chapter. And then we send those out to you guys typically in September, once all of the annual financial reviews have been completed and we've received all of that from the chapters. We start working on pre-populating these, and then we send them out for your review and pretty much your thumbs up to let us know everything looks good and we can move forward with the group return. So at the top, you'll notice it's just general information. It's your chapter name, the federal tax ID for the chapter. And then moving on, the next section is contact information. It lists the the treasurer, and then the person who takes care of the accounting records, which is also typically the treasurer. But if there is someone else, if the treasurer forwards those on to the president or wherever those are stored, you would want to list that person for section number 2. So next is, we'll go through, these are the pre-populated areas. In this form, they're blank, but typically Perla will pre-populate the current fiscal year, and then we also provide the prior year for comparison. So in this slide here is the balance sheet. So basically we'll ask you guys to go ahead and take a look at that, confirm all the numbers. We're pulling them directly from QuickBooks as well, but just in case there was any last minute adjustment, for whatever reason that we weren't aware of, please go ahead and take a look at these and confirm. Similar to last year, there will be a difference column over to the right-hand side. And we ask you guys, just for some additional explanation for any items over $10,000, if you could explain, I don't know, if prepaid changed significantly, if you started using a new vendor over a service period or anything like that. Just any sort of description to help us out, because when we file the 990, our tax accountants will come back to us at times and say, hey, why did this fluctuate so much? Or, what is the reason for that kind of thing? And by providing those explanations, it saves us both time and having to reach back out to you guys and ask the question after the fact, when we could just look back at the worksheet and then we have the answer right there. So again, we need you to analyze your financials and the input on these worksheets and then provide any feedback to us. So next is the chapter income statement. So same concept here. Perla will go ahead and pre-populate the current year. We'll provide the prior year as well for comparison. And again, there will be a variance column and a column for variance explanations over to the right. It's not pictured here, but we did that last year and a lot of you provided really great explanations for us. So we really appreciate that. So it'll be the same thing again this year. Take a look, any differences again over $10,000. Please provide a variance explanation for us, along with reviewing the numbers here to be sure that everything is correct and ties to your QuickBooks. So quick recap on that. Worksheets are typically sent out and due back sometime in September. We typically provide about two to 3 weeks, for you guys to review and, provide explanations and get that back to us. And then the final note here is just that, QuickBooks must be closed and the annual financial review must be completed before we can work on this 990 worksheet. That's kind of why the sequence of the dates are in that order. QuickBooks and the annual financial review are required to be closed typically by August 1st. And then we spend some time working on these 990 documents, and then we send those out in September. So that is it for the 990 and the Hfma annual financial review presentation. Thank you for joining the session. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at accounting@hfma.org.